Hello and welcome to West Wales. If you're new here, and I have had a lot of new subscribers, so there is a very good chance that you might well be, then I make 2 videos a week. One which is a vlog, which is sort of out on the weekends, and then midweek, which is all about fibre arts and textile arts. Mostly fibre arts, if I'm honest, because I'm only just getting back into sewing, and every other Wednesday I make a video about spinning all the rare breed sheep of the UK. And this is episode 3. And today I'm talking about the white-faced woodland sheep. Okay, so white-faced woodlands. They are on the priority list for the Rare Breed Survival Trust, which means that they are one of the 4 rarest breeds in the UK. They originate from the Pennines, which is the same place as the lonk comes from, but they're a little bit further up there, sort of Yorkshire, Derbyshire, as the lonk was more sort of a bit further down, so sort of on the Yorkshire, Lancashire border. They definitely do have ancestors in common with the lonk, and they are another one of what we'd call a down type of fleece. And a down type of fleece is, it has a chalky look to it. It's not particularly lustrous. There's a bit of crimp there, and quite often they are a medium. They're generally, so when I say medium, like a medium thickness to their fibres. They generally don't felt particularly easily, so if you're making something like socks, and we do talk about socks quite a lot on this channel, I realise, because I do like making a sock. Anyway, they're quite good for socks. They're also really good for woven outerwear. So if you're making a coat or something out of a woven fabric, then that's a really good use for this type of breed. They are quite an old breed. They were sort of established in the sort of mid 19th century. They're basically a hill breed. However, there was work done to improve the breed in that sort of time period, and the Duke of Devonshire, if you know your history and maybe you've been to Derbyshire, you will know that the Duke of Devonshire has his big house at Chatsworth, and it's one of the stately homes you could visit. I know I get a lot of folks from the States watching this channel. If you find yourself in the UK, Chatsworth is definitely one of those kind of grand country houses that should be on your to-do list, because it is quite spectacular. Anyway, bit of an aside. So the Duke of Devonshire, sort of mid-19th century, started improving the breed because it was the breed that his local sort of tenant farmers were using for keeping their families together, and it was the breed that was grazing on the hills and the fells above Chatsworth, and probably would have been on the Chatsworth estate. And he crossed with some Texel and some Merino. And obviously that's changed the character a little bit of the breed, but it really has been sort of established as a distinct breed since that time. And I've got combed top, and this came from World of Wool. Now, all these breeds, all these rare breeds, a lot of them you can get from places like World of Wool, which means that they've got a British wool mark against them. They have been graded and sorted by the Wool Marketing Board. They get a stamp of approval that says these are typical of the breed. We've taken out that hairy stuff, the stuff that you don't want to spin with. It's specifically designed for the wool industry. It is not designed for hand spinners. I mean, hand spinners make up a teeny section of the kind of wool buying population. Most of it goes into manufacturing, and that's carpets and coats and, woolly jumpers. So that for us as hand spinners, when we're buying something like this, okay, we know that it's a certain standard. It is the wool board standard, and it's going to be nicely prepared, and it's going to be typical of the breed. However, the farmer who has produced it is going to be lucky if they've made any money at all on this fleece because it all goes to the depot. They're paid a certain amount. It's probably cost them more to shear and transport it to the depot than they're going to get back when it goes to auction, because wool is an international commodity, so it is sold on an international market. And for something like this, these medium breeds, these rare breeds, because they're not the really, really fine merino, they are not getting these big prices that these sort of merinos and the much finer breeds are getting. So as hand spinners, we've obviously got lots of options where we can buy things. We can buy raw fleece, we can buy fleece straight from producers, we can buy it from places like World of Wool where it's got the wool mark. And so we just always have to have that in the back of our mind as to how we want to, I was going to say show up for our craft, but that sounds a bit poncy. It's up to you. If it's going to depend on your situation as to how you want to buy your fleece. And for some people, it's really not practical to be buying a whole fleece, a raw fleece that you then have to prepare yourself. However, one of the advantages of buying a whole fleece is firstly, you're buying direct from a producer so that you know all the money that you're giving them is going to that farmer. Plus, you can sort it yourself. So fleeces generally have good bits and bad bits. And the most pristine, the dog started barking. Of course of course she has. This is one of my videos. It wouldn't be one of my videos without the dog barking. Oh, Millie, what are you barking at? I don't know, it's probably the postman, I expect. Or a magpie. Yeah, now Andrew's telling her not to bark because he knows I'm recording this. Oh, Millie. Right. I'll wait until she's stopped barking at magpies or postman or whatever it is she's barking at, and then I will continue. I'm going to have a slab of coffee. I think she's decided she's had. Right, I think she has chased away the magpies, and I've had my coffee, so we can continue. What was I going on? So buying fleece. So that really lovely bit that's behind the back of the neck and sort of slightly going down the shoulders, that's the best bit of the fleece. And if you're sorting the fleece yourself, you can select that out. So if you wanted to make a really soft, beautiful shawl or something, then that's the bit you could use. If you're making a, I don't know, a peg loom rug, then you can use the kind of the breechy bits of breechy bits, no, breechy bits, kind of the leg bits that may be a bit hairy, not so nice, so that you can do that selection process yourself and you can choose the best bits and choose a project that's suitable for the fibres that you've got. So when you are buying from a producer who has actually either produced comb top or produced some carded roving or a carded bat or something like that, if it doesn't have the British wool mark, then you're reliant on the person that sorted that wool and that fleece. And because they don't go through that whole grading system, you're never quite sure what you're going to get. So I think it's a really good practice to build up a relationship with the people whose fleeces you like, whose product that you like, so that you can maybe be at the top of the list. If they've only got a few fleeces for sale, then kind of get on their mailing list so that you're going to get the good stuff. And there are lots of really, really good independent producers out there. So yes, I buy a lot from World of Wool. I'm on a fixed income. It's really good value for money. However, on the other side, I know there's not an awful lot going to the producer. So I like to spread the love. And this kind of the first 4 in this series have all come from World of Wool. And then the next 4 have come from an independent mill. And then I probably am going to try and pick and choose a few independent sort of shepherds who sell their fleece either prepared or as raw fleece. And I said before, I don't like doing raw fleece in the winter. It is quite a damp climate here. I find it quite difficult to get stuff to dry properly this time of the year. Gosh, that was an awful lot of talking. So Yesterday I got the wheel out, sat in front of the fire and spun up a bobbin of wool, and it was very nice. I think I preferred the lonk, but anyway, I'm going to now cut to my spinning so that you can just see how I sort of tackled it, how it worked for me, and thoughts on how it span up. Before I show you the spinning, I just have one thing to say. I have decided these spin along videos are not going to have any mid-roll adverts, which means that you don't have those kind of ads popping up in a really bizarre place wherever YouTube thinks that it's a good idea, kind of going, buy stuff, buy stuff, buy stuff. So I'm not having that. These are supposed to be nice, relaxing videos where we can spin along together and, you know, we can do a bobbin or, you know, however much you want to do. So instead, I've decided to advertise myself, which now I say that out loud sounds a bit weird. Okay, and the channel. I've decided to advertise the channel. So if you don't already, would you please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a comment? I love to know what you're working on. If you're spinning along, you can also tag me on Instagram and I'll put my handle on the screen, and also you can use the hashtag #RareBreedSpinAlong. So if you do that, then I will share your pictures and your spin on my stories. Okay, so advert over and let's start spinning. Right, here we are at the wheel, and I have split the fibre down into nice little thin bits. That's how I like to work. And I thought, rather than me having sort of threaded up and everything, which I'm finding I sort of start actually videoing sort of when I've messed about with the wheel a bit, and actually I thought I would start at the beginning. So I've got a very scrappy leader, and then this is a bit of hand spun that's on here already, and I quite like to join onto something that's already been spun on here. So I go through my first hook, then threading hook through the orifice, just hook it on and pull it through. So there we go. Now the next thing we're going to want to sort out is the tension. So I tend to turn the tension knob right down, as kind of, that's how I like my drive band to be, and I use a poly drive band. Not everybody does, I think it's personal choice, but I quite like them. I did start with a linen drive band, but I've sort of moved on to that. This age of wheel would always have had a linen drive band, but not anymore. Okay, so let's just see how this is gonna work out. Because it's comb top and I want to weave with an awful lot of this yarn, then I'm doing a worsted spin. And as we've discussed before, worsted, you are not letting the twist into your drafting triangle, and you are smoothing down your fibres. Now I've got my hands awfully close to the orifice, and I've said this before, I actually find it quite difficult to get my hand and the bobbin in shot if I have it where I naturally would like to spin, which is somewhere back here. And then of course you can't see my hands. And I have tried to do a wider angle shot, but it doesn't quite work. So yeah, I am pretty close to the orifice, which I wouldn't normally be. But I think you've really got to find what's comfortable for you. Okay, so I've spun on quite a lot. Let's just see what the tension is looking like. So I mean, that's quite twisty. So that's because although I'm spinning really close to the orifice, so there isn't that much twist going in, the take up's quite slow. So if I tighten this up, the yarn is going to be taken up onto the bobbin a little bit quicker, and that's going to mean less twist is going in it because it's got less time for the twist to go in. So that's feeling a bit fierce, so let's just turn it down a little bit. And it really is just trial and error until you get what's comfortable for you. Try and keep your treadling nice and even. My wheel does move a bit, and it's not that the actual wheel is wobbling very much. I mean, there's a little bit of play in it, but I think it's my uneven floor. So when you look at it, the whole wheel is just kind of wobbling about back and forward as I treadle, and it's the floor, I think. Anyway, right, so let's just see how the tension looks now. Okay, so for a weaving yarn, I think that's going to be okay. I might just tweak it a little bit so it's taking up a little bit faster. I mean, really just go up and down your tension until you find something that you're comfortable with. Now, I have spun on this wheel for a really long time, as I've said before, so I have got a tension and a ply back that I like for knitting yarn, and it is an awful lot less than that. So when we're putting twist in, you have more twist depending on how you want to use your finished yarn, generally speaking. So what you're aiming to do is have enough twist to hold the fibres together. And if you are planning to knit with the yarn, it's going to depend what sort of thing you're knitting, because socks need a bit more twist than, say, something for a fluffy jumper. And you probably would want to spin woolen style for a fluffy jumper, as socks you'd probably want to spin worsted. But there are no set rules, you know. I mean, just do what makes you happy. I think that's the only rule. Do what makes you happy. Because as we all like to say, and say it with me, there's no such thing as the spinning police. There's no such thing as the crafting police. Just do what makes you happy. Okay, let's just have a look at how that looks now. I think for weaving, I think that's going to be about right. So what I wanted to talk about today was whirls. And most spinning wheels these days have more than one whirl. So this is a 1980s Ashford, and I have two whirls. So what do I mean by the whirl? Let's just stop a minute. So that is the whirl, and basically it's the gears. And when we talk about a spinning ratio, how many times does that wheel rotate in relationship to your big wheel? It's as simple as that. And there is a way of testing it. If you've got a modern wheel, I mean, your manufacturer will tell you what the ratio is. So on an Ashford traditional of this age, it's about 6.5 to 1. So this wheel rotates 6 times for every 1 time the big wheel rotates. Oh, you can see the play in that wheel. There is a bit. Oh, I think I need new bearings. Oh well, that's for another day. Then we can just drop it down, and this whirl, I think it's either 14 or 16, I can't remember which. I mean, as I say many times, I'm not a very technical spinner, and this is a much faster wheel, so you can get a much finer spin with this. So if you're somebody that likes to spin lace weight, then you are going to need a faster whirl. so you can get that really, really fine singles yarn. And it can go, I mean, some lace wheels, the ratio is much, much higher. And so let's go back to, we're spinning now. I know, because as I said, I've been spinning on this wheel for many, many years. I get about Aran weight when I spin on this bigger whirl. I can get double knitting if I concentrate, but just my relaxed kind of default spin, I get about Aran weight. And I suppose the thing we all want to do as hand spinners is learn to create the yarn we want to use. And as I am kind of in a season of learning to weave, and I really want to spin weaving yarn. Oh, and sock yarn, because I always want to spin sock yarn, because it's my mild obsession, spinning sock yarn. Although I've said this before, I really haven't knitted very many socks this year. I've got loads and loads of sock yarn waiting to be knitted into socks, just not very many socks achieved. In fact, I'm wearing a pair of Andrew socks today because I didn't have a pair of my own that was suitable to appear on film. But actually, because I'm wearing an apron, you can't see them, so I needn't have worried. So let's just see how this tension is looking again. Oh yeah, it's now sort of relaxed into it. So as ever, drop a comment below, let me know what you're spinning. If you are spinning with the spin along, then let me know how you're finding this fibre. It's a pretty easy, I think it's a pretty easy spin. I don't think it's quite as easy as the last one we were spinning, which was, the name has gone out of my head. You're shouting it at me at the screen, I expect. What did it spin last? Oh, come on, brain, work. Oh, lonk. Yes, we were spinning lonk. So, yeah, I think the lonk was a slightly easier spin, but only slightly. I think this is slightly longer staple length. It has, I think this has less crimp. And really not hairy at all. So because I still have little hooks on my flyer rather than a woolly winder, I have to stop and move it along. Ooh. What did I do there? Yeah, that went a bit thin. So I can't remember who says this. Somebody says this in the spinning world, and I can't remember who it is. You can't treadle your way out of trouble. So I just sort of had a bit of a mistake there. So stop, go back, and just rejoin. And I think when you're spinning an unfamiliar fibre to you, you quite often do get those points when you don't get it quite right. And, you know, if it's going wrong, just stop. Just stop the wheel. Sit down. Sit down, you're already sitting now, but you know what I mean. Just sort of take a breath and, yeah, start again. So Millie is fast asleep on the sofa. We've been out most of the day. We went just very locally. Andrew was taking photographs. Millie and I were walking, and then we sat in the car and looked at the beach, drinking a cup of coffee, eating sandwiches, and it was delightful. I'm just thinking about whether it's a fibre I would spin again. I think it depends how it looks when it's finished. I am really impressed with the lack of kemp again. It's really not hairy at all. So I've just lit the fire and it is going quite well. I can see the fire from here. I'm right in front of the fire. So I might have to stop and fiddle about with it in a minute. Hopefully not. No, it looks like it's all right. There you go. So far so good. And just move on. Oh, hang on, let's just... Come on, stop making clonking noises, wheel. It's because I've put too much yarn in one place, so it's got a little bit unbalanced. It's my fault. I was thinking about the fire and chatting. I think it will even itself out, the clonking. Oh, that's really annoying. Hang on a minute. I hope you can tell, as I'm putting more yarn on, so a little bit more weight on that end of the bobbin, the clunking is getting slightly better. That was totally my fault. It's just sitting here, wittering away, thinking about the fire and the dog. I'm not concentrating on my spinning. And now I've got a bit of a lump in the middle of my bobbin. Which I guess is the advantage of the woolly winder, is you don't get that, do you? I did think I would just spin 25 grams with you. So 25 grams is just under an ounce. An ounce is 28 grams. But everything's sold in 100 grams in the UK. And I guess in Europe as well, because we're all metric, aren't we? Is Canada metric? Canada, and what about the Southern Hemisphere? I don't know whether the Southern Hemisphere is metric or imperial. I think metric, aren't you? I think so. Anyway, yeah, so for me, I find that I want a 50-gram bobbin by the time I've plied, so I just split my 100 grams into 4, and then in theory I've got nice even bobbins. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found that useful. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, in theory, the next video will be a vlog, and I'm hoping that I'm going to get my new loom put together, and I'm going to attempt to warp with the lovely cotton that I got in my last video where I was doing a thrift haul. However, I'm not sure how quickly I'm going to get the loom put together because I want to finish it first, and I actually don't even have anything to finish it with, which means I've got to go up. I was going to point in that way. Fishguard's not up that way. Fishguard's that way. I've got to go up to Fishguard, get something kind of polish or something to finish the loom with, finish it, put it together, whoop it. Am I going to get all that done? Oh, and we've got people coming at the weekend. So yeah, when I say people coming, people do not stay with us. I think I've said we've got people coming, and somebody said, oh, do you let rooms, or do you have a holiday cottage? No, we don't. People are coming to see us when they are staying somewhere else. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you, fingers crossed, on Sunday. So until then, may your needles be swift and your yarns be soft.